So what does percent mean? Well, percent literally means per 100. Think about the number of years in a century, or the number of cents in a dollar, or the number of centimeters in a meter. Cent means per 100. So we can change from a percent to a decimal by thinking of this 27% as really 27 over 100, and we could write that as 27 hundredths. Or 2% we could think of as 2 over 100, which we could think of as 2 hundredths. So taking a look at these two examples, you might realize that an easy way to change from a percent to a decimal is to simply move the decimal 2 places over to the left. So 27%, we move the decimal 2 places over to the left, that becomes 0.27. And with 2%, if we move the decimal 2 places over the left, we actually have to put a 0 here as a placeholder, and it becomes 0.02. So let's use that method to help us figure out these next few questions. 2.6%, changing that to a decimal, we would move this decimal place 2 to the left, and our answer here would be 0.026. So 2.6% as a decimal is 0.026. And 235%, and you might think it's strange to have 235%, but this is saying more than double if we're talking about 235%. But once again, we can change this from a percent to a decimal by moving the decimal place 2 over to the left. So we'd have 2.35. Let's take a look at two other examples here. Changing this from 0.02% to a decimal, we would move the decimal over 2 places to the left. We'd have 0.0002. Now, just to convince you that this is correct, that we want to do it this way, remember, percent means per 100, so we could think of this as 2.02 over 100. Or if I multiply the numerator by 100, I'd have 2 over, multiplying the denominator by 100, 2 over 10,000. And if you take a look here, the 2 is in the tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths place. So this is 2 10,000ths, or 0.02%. This one here, I'm going to think of this as 0.25%, because I recall that a quarter is the same as 0.25 as a decimal. So this is 0.25%. And then moving the decimal 2 places to the left, we would have 0.0025. And once again, you might think that's a bit strange, but remember, percent means per 100. So if I wrote this 25% as 0.25 over 100, and we multiplied the numerator by 100 and the denominator by 100, we'd have 25 over 10,000. And once again, tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths. This is 25 10,000ths. Let's take a look at some other problems involving percents. Here it says to find 15% of 180. Now remember, of means to multiply, and I'm going to take 15% and rewrite this as a decimal, 0.15, and then I'm going to multiply that, since of means multiply by 180, and when we do that, we get an answer of 27. Over here, we're going to write an equation. 23 means equals 25% of what number. So the of what number, the what number portion here, I'm going to use the variable x to represent the number. So 23 is 25%. I'm going to write this as a decimal. Of what number? I'm going to call that number x. And remember, of means multiply. And so to solve this equation, I'm going to divide both sides by 0.25. And when I do that, I get that the number that we're looking for is 92. And if you think about it, this seems like a reasonable answer. If I was to take 25% or a quarter of 92 to get 23, makes sense, since 92 divided by 4 is 23. Let's take a look at a few other examples. What percent of 64 is 48? So this what percent, I'm going to let that be the variable x. And remember, of means to multiply, and is means equals. So my equation is x times 64 is 48. And to solve this equation, we're going to divide both sides by 64. So x is 48 over 64, and that would reduce to 3/4, which as a decimal is 0.75, which means that the answer to this question is 75%. Let's take a look at another example. 18 is 9% of what number? And once again, the what number, that portion is going to be x in our equation. And of means multiply, and is means equals. So 18 is, that means equals 9%. Writing 9% as a decimal, I'd have 0.09 of what number? So multiplying by x. To solve this equation, I'm going to divide both sides by 0.09. And so that's going to give me that x is 200. So 9% of 200 is 18. Let's take a look at one other example before we take a look at some application problems. What percent of 60 is 150? Remember, is means equals, of means multiply, and the what percent here, I'm going to have that be x. So what percent of means multiply, so multiply by 60 here. What percent of 60 is 150? And to solve this equation, I'm going to divide both sides by 60. So I get x equals 150 over 60, or I could say 15 over 6. Or if I wanted to reduce that even further, I could say 5 halves, or I could say 2.5, 2.5, and as a percent, that's 250%. So just like to change from, let's say, a percent to a decimal, we move the decimal place 2 points to the left, or 2 places to the left. If I want to change from a decimal, like the 2.5, to a percent, I'm going to move my decimal 2 places to the right. And so that's how we get 250% from the 2.5. Alright, let's finish up with 2 more examples. If a $20 item is marked 20% off, how much money do you save, and what is the new price? So first of all, we need to know 20% of 20. We need to figure out what 20% of 20 is. So of means multiply. And 20% of 20 is 4. Now an easy way to figure this out is to figure out 10% and then double it. And an easy way to figure out 10% would be to divide this number by 10. 20 divided by 10 is 2, and then 2 doubled is 4. So we can either think of it as 10% of 20 doubled, or we can just take 0.20 times 20. But $4 is how much you would save. So that means the original price was 20, and you would subtract what you'd save, which means that your new price is $16. Alright, let's take a look at one last example. Here it's kind of a similar example to what we looked at. A store purchases an item at wholesale for $20. They mark up the price 20%. What is the retail price? So the store buys the item for $20. And 20% of $20, as we know, is $4. And so they're going to mark it up $4. So $20 is what the store bought it for. They're going to make a profit of $4. And so what you would pay, the retail price, is $24. Don't forget to do the survey at tinyurl.